Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is Behind the Steel Curtain co-editor Dave Schofield coming at you again. It's Tuesday night. It's just after 9 o'clock. So who's with me? As always, my big brother, Rich. Rich, how you doing tonight?
Steeler Nation, what's up?
You doing all right? You doing good?
I'm doing just fine.
Yeah. I wrote an article Sunday. We're 6 weeks removed from the last time the Steelers were on the field. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. When training camp start?
So. I was going to say, he's not the best color man of the game for nothing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So leave it all up the field.
I know. Well, it's funny because you're like, oh, the offseason. Things are moving along. Today was the first day that teams could use the franchise tag. Now, I didn't hear any reports of anyone doing that, and that's for a good reason, something we're going to get to. Some things have happened recently. We knew yesterday, and they talked about it on the Hangover, that Cam Hayward did his extension. Or it's not extension, sorry. I used the wrong word, which is so funny.
I know, because you're so particular about it.
Of people using the wrong terms that I even did an article about it. His is a restructure. I had the next one in mind, is why I said extension, and we'll get there in just a second. So we got Cam Hayward restructured. A lot of people were expecting that next one to be Stephon Tuitt. I brought up that might not be so easy to do right now because he's on the old CBA versus under the new CBA. And there's different stipulations based on them changing the number of games that they have to take into account with the old CBA. So it could still happen, but it might not. If you want to know more about that, go to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, and check out that article. You have something about that you want to say?
No, because you just made me then sit there and think a minute.
What's that?
After reading your article.
Oh, yeah.
So if instead of a restructure for Stephon Tuitt, what if we did an extension?
I thought of that, and I almost brought it up in the article, but the Steelers would have to make a really big exception because they don't do extensions until there's only 1 year left outside of the position of quarterback. That's their franchise, I guess, rule. I mean, they don't have to follow it.
Yeah.
I could have argued that if they want to break their own rule, it's going to be because, hey, we need to get guys under the new CBA. I can see that as an exception. I just don't know that they'll do it.
Because if they give him an extension, then they can move the numbers around and bring him to the new CBA, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because a restructure does not put a contract under the new CBA because you're not changing anything other than how you're distributing the money. So if you really want a full breakdown of that, seriously, go check it out. It's on the website. It's somewhere towards the top. There's been a lot of stuff happening, which we want to get to now because we get to be the first BTSC podcast to talk about the news that seems like news and seems like a lot of news, but you just still are like, yeah, let's wait and see for sure, but it sounds good. And that is that one, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger did meet today with Art Rooney II, according to Jared Dulock of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which nobody's disputed, especially since the news this evening was, well, first of all, they said that the meeting went well, if you know what I mean. What do you think a went well meeting means?
Means neither party got up and stormed out.
That's what I was thinking. They both seemed happy with stuff. They weren't mad at each other when it was all done. So, hey, Chad, I did just see your comment there that he appreciated that article there. Now, thanks for the shout out there. I appreciate that. So the meeting went well, but then we get the news. The news from, if you don't know the name, Ryan Tollner. If you don't know who Ryan Tollner is, that is the agent for one Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger. And I'm going to just flat up read the statement. This was reported by Aditi Kinkhabwala of the NFL Network. NFL Network? Yeah. I get them an ESPN switch sometimes, so I'm right on that one. NFL Network. And this is what he said in a statement about it afterwards. He says, they want Ben back and will contact me soon to address his cap situation. As we've shared since the season ended, we are happy to creatively adjust his contract to help them build the best team possible. A year ago, Ben wasn't sure if he could throw again, but he battled back to get 12 wins and the 8th division title of his career. They lost steam down the stretch, and that doesn't sit well for him. So the fire burns strong, and there's plenty of gas in the tank. Before we break down those words anymore, what was your knee-jerk reaction to that?
I kind of just looked at it that, Ben and Art the second sat down. They talk. The talks went well. Ben probably then contacts his agent and said, talks went well. We're going to get together and we're going to work out the money.
Make it work.
Yep.
Well, bottom line is, to me, I agree with you. I think this was a conversation that went from Ben had to have the conversation with Mr. Rooney. Mr. Rooney seemed to be on the same page, we assume, with general manager Kevin Colbert, where Ben might not have – things aren't going to be exactly the same for Ben. You got the new offensive coordinator. Right. They're wanting to do new things gradually with the Matt Canada stuff. And so Ben has this meeting. He meets with Mr. Rooney. When he's all said and done, it doesn't seem like anything they said makes Ben not want to play. Ben had to make the decision then. Was he going to tell his agent, hey, I'm not sure about this. Let me talk it over with the family. This might be it for us. I don't know if this is what I want to do. But instead, he says to his agent, all right, we all sound good. Your job is on now. Go make it happen. So in other words, it sounds like he got if you read between the lines, remember, this is reading between the lines. This is just what we're assuming, that he gave his agent the green light to go get it done, which is a step, which is news, which is moving in the, well, some people might think it's the right direction. Some people might think that's the wrong direction, because there are those that don't want Ben Roethlisberger back. There are those that do want Ben Roethlisberger back, but everybody that wants one or the other definitely does not want a $41.25 million cap hit for 2021. That's something I think we can all agree on. If you look at this stuff and break it down a little bit more, a couple things I just wanted to ask you about in there. Notice that he says we are happy to creatively adjust his contract. Notice when some other people were saying he's willing to take a pay cut. Did they use the term pay cut in there?
No. But that was done on purpose.
Yeah.
It's that may still happen.
Yeah.
But you're never going to come out and say that.
No. What's going to happen is most of the money's going into the signing bonus. The question is the years and all that other stuff that they add onto the contract.
Yep.
So, and maybe not even all the money. Maybe it's just some of it goes into a signing bonus for this year. Who knows? But so there's a lot to figure out with the numbers.
There is.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm feeling I saw all this come out and everything that's there, and I'm like, you know what? It's great. They're talking. Things look like they're moving along. But then I got the feeling, I don't know, my inner bad was coming out. Mm-hmm. I just felt my Brian Anthony Davis just coming to the forefront, and I just had to, go back in time for a pop culture reference, and I just felt, I needed to go back to Jerry Maguire.
Mm-hmm. Show him the money? No.
Well, sort of.
Okay.
It's, until they can show me the salary cap money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I don't have a whole lot to say or think about it.
Well, I have something more than that. I want to bring up something. I hope he doesn't mind if I out him or not. This was from Andrew Wilbar. I want to bring this up just to bring something. He says, is a restructure going to be a true pay cut, or is it just going to be kick the can into the future? That's the big question. It's probably kick the can into the future. We know this. We know that 22 and a quarter of it's not going away. I hope he doesn't mind that I out him, because Andrew Wilbar, he's had 2 articles on the main page for for Behind the Steel Curtain in the last couple of days. Hope that's okay that I didn't ruin your alias. Maybe I shouldn't say who his screen name is that he's writing under. But yeah, he had one Sunday and one today. Really good stuff. Also, by the way, so thanks for joining into the BTSC family, Andrew. But what I wanted to say about that is something that I've seen. I'm not calling Andrew out on this because this is just a live chat, but I've seen this on social media. I've even heard it said on ESPN, and it drives me nuts. And it's why I did the article I did this morning with terminology. Ben is not a restructure. Ben is an extension.
Correct.
Now, within that extension is a restructure, but you can't.
Correct.
But and I think we're all assuming that this is what you mean. But I've seen places list Ben Roethlisberger as one of the players for the Steelers that will be restructured, along with Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. And the only other two options are Boswell and Derek Watt. And I'm thinking about doing some articles about how wise that would be. And they throw in Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger does not fit in that category because he only has 1 year left on his contract. It has to be an extension first, and then you are restructuring the last year of his deal, or it could just be a whole brand new deal. They can do that as a possibility. So it looks like they're going to be working out stuff. I brought up something, and Jeffrey Benedict in our Slack channel agrees with me. There's some weird financials going on, much like with the Stephon Tuitt thing. Because remember, Ben's old contract is old CBA.
Yep.
Okay. How much does the 17th game come into this? Are they adding a 17th game? It changes the financials a little bit, but just enough to really hold up the stuff being done. Do you think that and the combination of not knowing the salary cap, do you think that's kind of what's going on here? Or do you think they're going to get it done anyway?
They're going to get it done. They're going to get it done anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're going to pay Ben enough, and he's been paid enough that I don't think anybody's going to be crying over anything.
Yeah.
At least anybody shouldn't be crying over anything.
Shouldn't be crying over anything. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because people are like, oh, well, we need to move on. Or even though Ben Roethlisberger may not be what he was, it doesn't mean that he's still not the best option. It doesn't, and you just have to change how you build a team around him. Okay, so I do have to say I did get permission from Andrew. If you want to know his articles, Steeler Fan 11 on the website. That's Andrew. He had a great 3-round mock draft that we bumped up to the main page on Sunday, and then he wrote his first official straight to main page article today about the pros and cons of a first-round running back. Very good stuff. Make sure you check it out.
Andrew, I enjoyed the mock draft article.
Yeah,
you didn't know that.
Yeah,
I read that on Sunday. I enjoyed that one, actually.
Yeah, that was a big article. That did really well. And we had to put a disclaimer because we didn't bump it to the main page. He wrote it before the Carson Wentz trade. Yeah. So, but then we didn't put it up there till after the trade. So we had to say that's on us. All that really good stuff. Looking forward to more stuff from him. So this is good stuff. And I know we want to dive into the other topic of the show, but this happened since we decided what we were going to be talking about tonight. This is kind of an important step of the Steelers offseason. Do you think this sets other things in motion for the Steelers? Or do you think the name's got to be signed on the dotted line first?
Got to be signed on the dotted line first.
Yeah.
It can set it in motion, but nothing else can happen until this is done.
That's true. That's true.
It's got to, right. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can behind the scenes work stuff thinking you got an idea what's going on, but until this is signed, it's not done. And you can't do other things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, and it's so interesting because you can spin the Ben Roethlisberger how you're looking at him going into 2021. Either way, it's kind of, this goes back to another article. This was my 6 weeks article that I did on Sunday, was you kind of fall into whatever narrative you want to believe. And that's what we kind of feel sometimes about the Steelers now that we're 6 weeks removed from the last time they played. We have sometimes our memory might not be as good as what we think. Instead, we think what we feel rather than what actually happened. And I brought up some options about, or some examples of that, which I've myself done. I did that last year. Was thinking Benny Snell, based on his last game, was ready to explode this year and didn't quite happen. So I'll take that one on the chin. But that's kind of how some people are with Ben Roethlisberger, is you can spin it either way. They're like, he's getting older. He completely fell off last year. What makes you think that he's going to last any longer this year? I get it. But at the same time, there's also the camp of he didn't have a regular offseason because he was rehabbing. He was coming back off the elbow surgery. Give him a year to actually do everything the way he normally does to see if he can do it again. Does that make sense? Do both of those arguments sound about what you're getting either way?
Yeah, it is. Because, you can look at it the same way. How is his elbow any different from a guy with an ACL? They can come back and play after that injury, but typically it's year 2 before they get back to fully being the player they were before.
Yes.
Or anywhere close to the player they were before. So
I agree. And I'll be honest with you. I think if Ben Roethlisberger struggles, they won't hesitate as much as they would have in the past to explore other options throughout the season, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
But that's putting the cart before the horse. We're really getting out there.
Sure is.
So
get off that.
But it's news that it looks like that's the direction that it's going. So now, last question about it before we move from quarterback to cornerback. Okay.
Yep.
Before, we said with Ben, we felt it was 50-50 and we were both okay either way with however it went. Where do you put that now?
80-20.
That's the exact numbers I was going to go with too. 80-20. And, there's still a chance it doesn't work out, but I think you're right there. So, so let's transition over. It's so much talk with the Steelers has been about the quarterback position that I was diving into some stuff with the cornerback position on defense. And I was like, this is something that there's a lot of stuff up in the air that I really wanted to discuss with you and figure out. And that is the Steelers, their 2 starting corners have very large cap hits this upcoming year. I'll go ahead and tell you now, tomorrow Steelers Vertex for Jeffrey Benedict and myself at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, is on Steven Nelson. And the season that he had and how, although Jeffrey brought up some great stuff in the film that he might not have had the same stats that he did in 2019, but look at the extra stuff they were asking him to do. You've got to check that out tomorrow. It's good stuff. Jeffrey always does a great job with his film breakdown. But the one thing I brought up was Steven Nelson signed the most expensive free agent contract that the Steelers had ever done. And it was 3 years, $25.5 million. Over $14 million of that is counting towards this year's salary cap. So over half of the contract that he's getting is being counted here on this 3rd year. That's tough. So when you got Steven Nelson at $14.42 million, you've got Joe Hayden's cap number is $15.575 million. There's a lot of question marks there. And I've heard one or both players as big potential salary cap cuts by the Steelers. Because when you look at the numbers, Hayden, you would be saving $7 million. Nelson, he doesn't have as big of a cap hit, and you would be saving more. It'd be $8.25 billion if you're looking at that. But then you got to look at the rest of the roster. You got to look at the rest of that roster. And you've got free agents in Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton. So you're talking about your top 4 corners. Do you really want to go into your season with all 4 of them gone?
Well, no.
No.
But the questions are, what do you do or what can you do?
Yes. What do you do and what can you do? So before we decide what we can or can't do, let's break down who they got and what it costs. So I went over Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson. On Monday, I did this all stemmed from an idea I had in my head from an article I did Monday that was about cost above replacement. And I looked and I lumped Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton together because it was the same position. So it made sense to talk about it. And when I got to look at it, I'm like, the Steelers don't have an answer for slot corner if they lose both those players. You agree?
Yeah.
I mean, because after those two guys, you've got Justin Lane on a rookie deal. You've got James Pierre, undrafted free agent that played in 16 games last year. Well, hold on, 17 games last year, got to include the playoff game. And when it came down to it, when they had to decide for when they needed another outside corner with Joe Hayden out on the COVID list, and when Cam Sutton would go back into his dime role, they went with Pierre over Lane in the playoff game. So you've got him, but then beyond that, you have a player that they signed to a futures contract in Trevor Williams, who has played. Let me count him up. He's played 37 NFL games in 5 seasons. He has 27 starts. But I'm trying to think. It was 2000. I'm looking. 2017 was when he started 15 games for the Chargers and everything. They signed him to a futures contract, which is taking a flyer on someone. But I don't know that that's someone that you really can, have your plans on. And then they also have another futures contract guy in Steven Denmark. And that's their corners. So what do you do, Rich? What do you do? What do you do with Nelson? What do you do with Hayden? What do you do with Sutton? What do you do with Hilton? What do you do?
I'll put on my GM hat. And...
Yep, that's the question.
All right. I'm not saying this is what they're going to do, but to me, here's something I think they're probably looking at, see if it makes sense. Okay. Steven Nelson is what? How much younger is he than Joe Hayden?
I think he just turned 28, if I do recall.
And Joe Hayden
he's in his third. Is he 31?
1 or 2?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Is he one of those guys that's 31 now, but he'll be 32 for next year?
Yeah, maybe.
I'll double check while you're talking.
I'm sitting there thinking, okay, let's extend Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
Save a little cap money there.
Mm-hmm.
You cut Hayden. And you save that cap money there.
Mm-hmm.
And you use all those savings to see what you can do to hold on to both Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton.
To keep both of them. Okay.
Yep.
I could see that. So in other words, we're saying...
Because what you could basically end up doing is you could leave Sutton or Hilton in the slot, put Sutton to the outside and Joe Hayden's spot, and you still got Steven Nelson on the outside.
Mm-hmm. And then all you have to replace is basically the dime safety role that Cam Sutton was doing. So
correct.
Okay, so just to clarify, I was right. Joe Hayden's 31. He turns 32 on April 15th. So that's what to do there, which is interesting because I think it was Art Rooney II and not Kevin Colbert, because I think it was further back when they were talking with the media and everything, and they brought up Joe Hayden, made it seem like the Steelers are more likely to hold on to Hayden than Nelson. Now, I think, especially after doing the Vertex article with Jeffrey, looking at the film that he showed out there, you are spot on when I think it needs to come to an extension for Steven Nelson. The question is, how much more are you going to have to pay him than what you paid him in his last contract? That's going to be the big question with him. You're going to think I'm crazy.
No, I'm not going to think you're crazy. Go ahead.
I think you extend Joe Hayden. I think you give Joe Hayden 2 more years, but you're not doing, and you're going to basically give him his salary this year, always a signing bonus other than the minimum. And you're not going to look at huge base salary beyond there because of his age. He's a guy that you're not going to have to pay him more than what you were paying him. What's that?
Yes, that was my next thought.
Yeah. that you can
Let's go
extend him
that
if you're
route.
not paying him more. Because Jeff Hartman brought up something on his Let's Ride podcast that it's funny because I'm going to screw it up. That's why I'm double checking here to make sure that I didn't. He brought this up, and I thought it was a really good point. And then it got me thinking about other things. And he said, maybe you extend Joe Hayden and you keep him around for a couple years. And if he seems like he's not the same outside corner, then you go the Deshae Townsend route to where as you get older, you move from an outside corner to be in the slot corner that's not there all the time. Now, if that's a possibility down the road, then I think the guy that if one of the four you aren't able to keep, I think it's Mike Hilton. Because what you could do, as long as Joe Hayden's fine on the outside, you've got Cam Sutton in the slot. But then if Joe Hayden needs to move to the slot, you have Cam Sutton who can play on the outside. Mike Hilton he's a slot corner. You know, that's who he is. What was the term that someone used the one time? Slot backer. Yeah, which is basically what he is. Doesn't mean that I don't want to keep Mike Hilton. I would love to just keep all four of them. That is the best way to do things.
That would be great,
forward.
but I just don't see how they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah. I was really surprised at the numbers that PFF put on these guys' contracts. It really was surprising because especially so on the Steelers defensive side. And I have another article coming out from the offensive. If you read my defensive cost over replacement article, the offensive one's coming. I feel like they overvalued the Steelers offensive players and undervalued their defensive players. I mean, they have Bud Dupree at $10 million a season. He's coming off of a major injury, but
that's why the injury's why they dropped it to that.
But they have Mike Hilton at $4 million a year and Cam Sutton at $2.75 million a year. I say if that's the case, that you can get them both for under $7 million combined per year, and knowing that it'll be lower in the first year based on the signing bonuses and stuff. My goodness, why are they? Why you don't need to wait for Ben Roethlisberger to do that? You make that move now, and then you make it again, and then you do it again the next day. You run to get them to sign those contracts because to me, I think that's great value for both of those players. What do you think?
You're right. And, if you give Joe Hayden an extension and can move some of that money around, that probably gives you the money. If you can get them for that price, you can keep them both.
Yeah. I mean, what would be great is if you say, okay, we're not going to worry about going under the salary, using corner to get us under the salary cap. We'll do that other places like corner.
Yeah. But let's see if we can use it to break even at corner.
Yes, that's exactly it. If you could save the money from the other two players and keep those two players, and then then James Pierre's got another year to work. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, and who knows how that's going to go? And honestly, if James Pierre,
do your magic. Oh,
yeah. If James Pierre ends up being the Steelers just don't find corners like that. Recently, they can't even draft them very well. So, I mean, Cam Sutton, there you go. That's the best drafted corner they've had in a long time. I have a feeling Justin Lane's going to stick around on his rookie deal as a depth piece, but I don't know that that's going to work out. I think Pierre is more the guy that could be the next guy. And know that you're going to have him for a while. You don't have to rush him into a lot of action. So if you don't get all four of them, at least having three. So I kind of like what you were saying with that before. So when we come back for part 2, because we're about ready to take a break, we're going to go into what the best, if you can only keep 2, what's the best 2 to keep? If you can only keep 3, who's the best ones to keep? Which ones are the best ones to keep out of all these? We're going to do that. And then we're hopefully going to maybe have a little bit of time for questions, and we'll definitely get to our big question at the end like we do. I guess we need to give that a name. We just going to call it the big question?
Sure.
Until we come up with something better.
Yeah.
So until that. So we'll that stuff that's coming up here in part 2. So if you're listening to an audio side, go ahead and click on over. And if you're listening here on YouTube or Facebook, just give us a few seconds and we'll be right back. And we are back, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, with part 2 of the Scho Bro Show. I am Dave Schofield, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And with me, giving all the good insight, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, having fun so far?
Looking for that good insight you were talking about. I didn't see any around.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about the Ben Roethlisberger news. We think that's interesting. We want to see the signing on the dotted line, make sure everything's good.
Done.
We're breaking down cornerback because I tell you what, if they lose these guys, they're in trouble. A question I didn't ask you: if the Steelers, because we're going to get to this, if the Steelers were to lose 2 of the 4 cornerbacks we're discussing, if they decide to make a cap casualty out of either Steven Nelson or Joe Hayden, and then they can only sign either Sutton or Hilton, and they're down to 2. And then you got Pierre Lane. How confident are you for the Steelers replacing their depth at the quarterback position through the NFL draft? For those of you listening, Rich just covered his face with his hands.
Let me just have a few great words for you through the years. Let's see, what kind of things can we think of? We can think, of course, recently Artie Burns. Mm-hmm. We can go back further when they've tried to make big splashes, and they've been all right, but never great. I always remember Chad Scott and some of those other guys. Yeah. Really, have we drafted a really great corner since we drafted Rod Woodson?
I mean, no. I mean, let's just say this.
I was serviceable.
Yeah,
and I mean serviceable in the fact that he was above average and had a nice long career.
Yes. Have they really been able to do it in the Mike Tomlin era?
No.
So not a lot of confidence there. So let's play devil's advocate. Let's say the Steelers can only keep 2 of those 4 corners.
Good gracious.
Which 2 you keeping?
Honestly, if I can only keep 2, I'm keeping the 2 starters.
You're keeping the 2 starters. Okay. I'll throw it out a little bit different. I'm going to keep. Oh, go ahead. Give an explanation.
No, you go ahead because you're going to do what I was going to do. Go ahead.
I would keep Nelson and Sutton.
Yep, that was my next thing where I would go.
Because now this is looking at it in hindsight, where you don't know, because when you sign these guys, you don't know if you're going to get the other guys or not and everything else. The reason I would be the happiest with those 2 is Nelson's got the experience and he's younger than Hayden. Okay.
Yep.
And then Sutton brings the versatility of playing either inside or outside that you don't get from Hilton. I'm not saying they're the better 2 players. I'm just saying they'd be the better 2 scheme to hold on to because you could be looking more long-term. Love Joe Hayden. Really love Joe Hayden. Every year that the Steelers get great play out of Joe Hayden is fantastic. But as we saw, it happens with everybody. Eventually you're going to get to a place where you don't. So, and I think Joe Hayden is closer to that than anyone else, strictly because he's going to be 32. So that's the way I would go. And how concerned would you be about the Steelers secondary if that was the case?
Oh, I would be concerned.
Okay. So now we know we want to keep all 4.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get to keep 3.
Okay.
Now you get to keep 3.
All right. If I can keep 3, I'm going Nelson, Hayden, Sutton.
Nelson, Hayden, Sutton.
Yep.
I'm going to agree with that. And what's crazy is I want to keep Mike Hilton so bad because he does things that are so different and can bring that. But he's kind of the luxury, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's wow, he's really nice to have, but I would feel more comfortable with the other three.
Yes.
Because you could, but
no, go ahead, keep going.
Because you could play, because Sutton can play inside, outside. Hayden plays outside, but but maybe he could play inside some. It's a little more versatility between what you can do with those guys.
And the reason I said yes, breaking news from Evgeny Crosby that the Penguins just won in overtime. It was 2-2 going into the third when we went to start the show. So
gotcha.
they got the 2 points in overtime. Sorry, I was a little excited about that. I mean, you got no Steelers, got to be excited about the Penguins.
Sure.
So, sorry about that.
No,
so
that's okay.
Yeah, I love Mike Hilton, and like I said, if someone's going to pay for Mike Hilton to come in as their slot corner, he's got to go to a really specific place that's going to use him right, or he's going to be that free agent bust.
Yep.
Because he's not your typical slot. And the worst thing a team can do is bring him in and try to make him a typical slot. Agreed?
Yeah. But who's out there that would use him right?
Baltimore?
Maybe.
Tennessee, yeah. I could see maybe, I'm thinking of teams that would have the right philosophy with it. I mean, and honestly, you got to have the safeties. You got to have the safeties over the top for him to be able to do what he does.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I drop him to fourth on the list, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as I like what he brings there, I feel you can still get other guys that can blitz off the corner. Now, will they do it as well as Hilton does it? No. But you can play Sutton in there, and he can blitz. Will he be as good a blitzer as
he's not the blitzer?
No, he's not.
He's your coverage,
but he's going to be a better in coverage than Hilton is.
Yes. So, yeah, it's the way it all works together is so great. It would, let's just say this: if the Steelers keep 3 and one of them is not Mike Hilton, then you're talking about that it's just you couldn't keep them all and you had to keep what service allowed you to do the most.
Yeah.
If the Steelers keep 3 and one of them is Mike Hilton, that tells me that James Pierre is going to be the real deal, and they know it. He just needs a little bit of time to get there. That's my opinion. Yeah. You can let someone else go if you think he's going to be that good. Do you agree?
Yeah. If you think he's going to be the real deal, then you can afford to let one of those other guys go instead.
Yeah. Yes. I think I think that's right. I think we're on the same wavelength. Yep. Yeah. So bottom line is, are we okay with extending both of those guys? That's the big question. Do you want to do that? Do you want to tie up? I mean, I think not extending Steven Nelson would be very foolish.
Yeah,
this year. I think he should be, after Ben Roethlisberger, when you're talking extensions, I would almost put him priority number 1 when it comes to extensions. Now, some people are like, well, what about TJ's deal? I'm not talking about that. TJ can still play on his 5th-year option and they could do his deal next year.
Yep.
Some people think that's foolish, but I'm like, no, you could, you tag him and sign him. And you just have to continue to do that. Because personally, I still think $10 million for TJ Watt this season is still a steal, So, and we don't want to forget about Justin Lane. Someone brought it up in the live chat. I just happened to look down and said, he'll still have a shot this year. Yes, he will. The thing is how much do you want to have to bank on them? So, there are options, but to me, if you're only going to keep, here you go, I'm going to blow your mind. Out of those 4 guys, you only get to keep 1.
Only keeping 1.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got it narrowed down to 2.
I do too.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and say Steven Nelson.
Okay, that's where I'd lean into, but it'd be really tempting to go with Cam Sutton because of the versatility. But if you have other guys that can play the outside, I'm really worried about the Steelers' slot corner position if they can't keep either Hilton or Sutton. Because I don't believe Justin Lane or James Pierre is built to be that person. Doesn't mean that they can't. And maybe the Steelers have the whole idea of moving Joe Hayden there, but I don't think that's a good move to do now with the way Hayden's playing on the outside.
Right now.
I mean, if they could keep all these guys, I mean, they'd be in great shape. Great shape.
Yeah, like I said, if Kevin Colbert and Omar Khan could sit down and figure out how to keep all four guys at a cap hit that is no different than the 2 they currently have for just this 1 year, I say you do it.
Okay, so you're talking about if you can get all 4 for a cap hit of, I'm going to round it. Oh wow, that's within $5,000 of being right on of a cap hit of $30,000. I think that can be done. I think they could come in under that if they can get both those 2 extended and bring in the other 2 with the signing bonuses to start. I think that's doable. I think that's a win. I think that's a win if they do that.
Yeah, I think it would be too.
We're doing the best we can to keep these shows from going crazy in the off season like we did last week, and we just kept going and going and going.
Dave got scolded.
Yeah,
let's just be honest.
Well, no, that wasn't just me.
I know it wasn't just you, but you got scolded.
Yeah, I know. But we try to say what we're going to do. We need to stick with what we're going to do. Do you want to take 5 minutes and answer a few questions before we put our big question out there?
Couple randos. Let's get a couple.
Yeah, let's get some. Let's get some. It could be about the cornerback stuff. It could be about Ben Roethlisberger. It could be. Let's try to keep it Steelers related. And we're obviously not going to get to all of them, but we'll get to what we can. You can use a super chat. Don't feel like you have to use a super chat. It's all right. We can just get them out there. This is a good question already.
Yep. Go fast with
it. Andrew, if William Jackson can be signed for what we could save by trading Nelson or Hayden, should we sign him, William Jackson III, and trade one of our corners for a third? And that Urban Meyer might want Hayden from college or something with that connection. Would you be willing to bring in someone like a William Jackson? If you had, to me, the only reason I'd make that move is if you are getting rid of either Hayden or Nelson, one of your starters.
Exactly.
And I don't know that I would do that out of familiarity, but it's a good question. I don't know that I'd go that route, but if the money works, everything you do has to be there with the money. So great question. I don't really have the answers for it. I know some people. I'm afraid William Jackson's going to be a lot more than that. That's the biggest thing with me. That I think he'd take more. Tom wants to know. He says there's rumors the Steelers are targeting former players that are cut from other teams, like Finney, Jesse James, and other stuff. I did the thing about Kelvin Beachum. Right now, Kelvin Beachum's the only one that's actually a free agent. Okay, I could see him coming back to the Steelers. You think? As other former Steelers get cut, you think they're coming? You think there's a good chance
if Jesse James ends up a cap casualty, would not surprise me one bit to see him back.
Same here
with the black and gold.
I'm not banking on it because he's got to be cut first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And same with BJ Finney to give some.
Both could end up being cap casualties, but
I mean, BJ Finney did not play an offensive snap in the NFL last year between Seattle and Cincinnati. He did not play any offensive snaps. So Very interesting. So you got it. You had the good.
Steeler Chick 46. What will TJB sign long term? Steeler Chick. If this one's pretty simple in my mind, the Steelers he will play this year on the $10 million 5th year option of his rookie deal. The Steelers will then put the franchise tag on him, and they will work out his extended contract before that deadline.
That's what I bank on too. Is there still the possibility they could do it this offseason? Yes, there is. But I don't think it has to be done. And frankly, the only way that I would do it is if it actually knocks down this year's cap hit, because there's so much of a signing bonus spread out over, I think you can only spread it over 5 years. So even if they sign him to like a 6-year deal, it wouldn't matter. So it would really depend on those numbers. Good question. Yep. Cree wants to know, do the Steelers draft any defensive players?
Well, having my degree in mathematics, the statistics tell me yes.
Wouldn't even be shocked if that's their first draft pick. The Steelers.
Wouldn't surprise me either.
They're going to need to add some depth at edge. And honestly, if the right inside linebackers there to pair with Devin Bush, that would just be like boom. Like we talked about the linebacker from Tulsa that I think Collins is his name. Somebody like that. I could see the Steelers doing that, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. They're going to add at least 2 defensive players. But remember, the Steelers are going to most likely have at least 1, if not 2, compensatory draft picks. And they're on the verge. It's funny because 2 of their picks are so close to each other based on the valuation of them. They could lose both of them or actually get both of them because one of them is barely in and one of them is barely out. So it'll be real interesting to see. That should be coming up here in March. You got the next question?
Portna says, if we sign JJ, shouldn't the Watt brothers have to wear thick black glasses and one of them punch Myles Garrett during warm-ups? That would be hilarious.
That would be great. I love that. So, and like people say, if JJ goes to Cleveland, that's a complete betrayal. So
he's not going to Cleveland.
Yeah. Do you understand this question? Tyler wanted to know what's better, inside linebacker or offensive tackle. If he means to draft, I'm not sure. We might have to skip over that one. Wasn't sure what he meant there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's meaning there either.
So sorry about that, Tyler. Josh said, if you could keep one free agent, who would it be?
Bud.
You keep, regardless of money. See, to me, it's not. Right. It's not Bud, because I'm still big on that cost over replacement.
I know.
You have Highsmith right there going. Same with a lot of other things, even with Juju, because you got more wide receivers behind him. Honestly, it'd be one of the corners for me right now, the way I'm leaning, just especially based on what I think their salary would bring. Or honestly, probably my best answer is Tyson Alualu. I'd like to see him back. I just really like him and thought he was fantastic this year. Let's do 2 more. Okay. So do you got him or me?
You get one, then I'll get one.
Okay. So here we go. I didn't even read it, but this is from Todd. He said, did the Steelers draft a quarterback or possibly is it going to be like Najee Harris as a running back? I don't see them drafting. If you're talking first round pick is what I'm assuming here. The only way, if you're going to go quarterback, go big. Even with Ben Roethlisberger supposedly coming back. Michael Beck, I think, has an article that he's working on that says with Ben coming back, that could even be a bigger reason to maybe go get a quarterback this year. If you're going to do it, go do it. Make the move, get the guy. Don't just pick a guy who just happens to be there when who you really want was already gone. I'm not big on first-round running backs because I don't see the Steelers keeping running backs super long-term beyond their rookie deals. So I don't know. From what I've seen is there's not a large drop-off to a couple good running backs that could be there in the second. I'm really big on the one guy out of North Carolina that could be there, and it is what it is. So what do you think, Rich? I spent too much time on that.
Yeah, I kind of glazed over looking for another question to take. So,
gotcha. Quarterback. off the table this year? Or do you think it's a possibility?
It's still a possibility. Probably more likely next year after.
I'm like Jeff Hartman. If you're going to go get someone, go get Trey Lance. I mean, you're not going to be able to go get Trevor Lawrence. So if you're going to go get someone, go get Trey Lance, who didn't play this year because of it being the FCS. I think he had one game.
Right.
That gives him a year or whatever. If you're going to do it, but you don't have to do it. I'm going to take the last question because it's a super chat.
Okay, go for it.
Tyler says, my bad, $5 in the tip jar. My bad. Meant to say, do we draft offensive tackle or inside linebacker in the first round?
I still can't answer that yet, Tyler, because I need to see what the Steelers do right now in terms of who leaves, who potentially resigns.
Mm-hmm.
That what happens over the next, let's see. The free agent period starts 17th.
Well, the legal tampering is the 15th.
15th, right?
They can officially sign on the
17th.
Yeah.
Will within a week or so after that time, things will start to line up a little better, and that will be a little easier. If you were to ask me my thoughts right now, my thought is a little bit depends on who's there. I agree with Dave. If that perfect inside linebacker is there to pair with Devin Bush over the next few years, I don't see how you could pass on that.
Yeah.
But if one of those great offensive tackles has slid down a little further than you'd expect, be kind of tough not to go get that too.
So if they're both there,
wow,
the inside tackle you thought might not inside tackle.
Yes, that was pretty. Okay,
we're gonna get the inside tackle.
Yeah.
Okay, if they're both there, a specific tackle that they thought might not be there for, but they really like, and a specific inside linebacker that you thought would be there thought wouldn't be there that you really like. They're both available. What do you do?
Again, I can't say for sure because I don't know.
You're giving a Dave answer.
Well, do we have Robert Spillane?
Yeah. No.
Do we have Avery Williams?
Rights. They just
right. But you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
Who's in our inside linebackers room? Who's in our offensive lineman room? That will say a lot as to what we want to do if things are all said and done equal.
I mean, I watched last year's Senior Bowl looking at the tight ends because it was so obvious the Steelers were going to need to draft a tight end. No, they didn't. They signed Eric Ebron. Something like that could happen, and that could change everything. But if you've got to go at it from now, Tyler, that's a great question. I'm saying if you go into going into the draft before the first player's name is called, I'm thinking that there's going to be a good offensive tackle that's available. To me, inside linebacker is just going to be one of those things that the Steelers will be doing their due diligence. And if it falls in your lap, you might just have to say, we can't pass it up. I mean, remember how upset people were that they drafted Juju Smith-Schuster in the second round because we needed a corner so bad. But guess what? They're like, he was just too good to pass up in that spot. They were right.
Yeah.
So you good? All right. We need to get to the big question. So do you have a big question?
Or as we like to call it, the rapid fire question.
The rapid fire question, where we throw out one question first to each other, and then we will put it in the live chat, and we will bring up your responses right away. Did you have one?
That it looked to be quick. I don't have one. If you
okay.
No, go ahead.
So we are going to go with this. Okay. I'm sure we've talked about it a bunch. We've just got to do it. You've got to go. Let's go with the either or of the two free agent cornerbacks. We've answered this already. You can only sign one. I know we would ultimately love to sign both of them, but we're going to try to get the pulse of the BTSC live chat is if you can only get one. Here it comes now in the live chat. We've already answered it. Are you going Hilton or Sutton? You can only pick one. Who's it going to be? So we already know that you say if you could only do one, you would go Sutton. That's what Gyro's going. He's saying Sutton. So I would say Sutton just based on the versatility.
Oh,
It jumped on you, didn't it?
Yeah, you got to get rolling.
Cree has Hilton. Ezra has Hilton. Shaquille has Sutton. Kathy has Hilton. Now we're doing this assuming that both of the other guys are still here, that we still have both Hayden and Nelson.
Right.
So it would be the other one. Okay. Steeler fan 74, Sutton. Okay. Is that, I'm going to mess that first name. Is that
Myrna Jane, and Bert, who by the way is in Maui. I saw you when you came on and said, "Hey, from Maui, Hawaii." So enjoy the sunshine.
At that profile picture, I'm like, they're just up not too far from where my seats are. They're at Heinz Field, and they say Sutton. Donald Nolan says Sutton. I know I'm going to skip. I know this is going to jump on me. AJ says Sutton. Steel Dog 88 Hilton. George Teston Hilton. Miller was going with the proper spelling this time with Sutton. I know we all want to type too fast. Steelers Pittsburgh says Hilton. Just Me says Sutton. Robert Ellison Sutton. Okay. Benor says Sutton better in coverage. I agree Sutton's better in coverage, but Hilton does add that element that you don't have otherwise. So therefore, he said he was taking Sutton. Yeti says Sutton. Chad says Sutton. Todd says Hilton. Okay. Let's Toast Media says Sutton. It skipped on me. I got to go back and find it.
Double H.
You guys are typing them so fast. It's going crazy.
Yep. Double H says
he
Sutton.
Says Sutton. Shane, what is this? Shane, behind the steel curtain, Sutton. Tom says Hilton. Okay. So let's see. Josh, what did he say?
Josh says Hilton gives Lane or a draft pick year to be groomed.
Okay, yeah. I still think it's Pierre here to be groomed, personally. Sam says Sutton. Andrew Wilbar says Sutton. Steeler Chick 46. Did we already say her?
No,
I don't know if we did or not. Hilton. Okay. Justin Conway says Hilton. I think I got Donald Sutton already. Man, this is we're split pretty even, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Reginald says Sutton because Hilton struggles with his coverage. Dark Storm 1 says Sutton, though it's very close.
Sure.
Raheem Hunt says I like Hilton more. I get it. Okay. Tyler W says Hilton with Blitzburg because of coming off the blitz.
Yep.
Josh Smith said Hilton. I think we already got him, didn't we? I love Ezra's.
Yeah, I know.
Rod Woodson.
Can we have the 23-year-old Rod Woodson?
Not the already with the gold jacket. Rod
yes.
Woodson. Okay. Derwin says Hilton. Ryan Sandal says Hilton, but because he loves those blitzes.
Yeah.
Well, I missed it. It went away. I skipped again. Awesome stuff. 1983 says, I don't know the question, but Sutton.
Thank you. Awesome stuff.
Now it's a lot of people getting into discussion about it, which is great. Henry Manuel says Sutton. That Extra Black says Sutton. It's close. It really is. And honestly, what Sutton really has.
And I totally understand why some folks really like Hilton because they love that blitz coming off the slot. And I don't blame you. I love that blitz coming off the slot. That's why we need Omar to work some money some money magic, and we find a way to keep all four guys.
Yep. Mosto says Sutton for him. Yeah. I mean, this is it. We need to work the magic and see if you can keep them all. That's the best because honestly, that's the answer I think almost every person in the chat would say if we gave them that question of
yes.
Are you keeping one or both? I think everyone's going to say both. They like it. Okay. So this is crazy. This is interesting that the situation they're in. I think they can make this one work. I think they can make this one work. So do you. So Rich, before we close out the show here, anything else you have here for some closing thoughts before I give you mine?
No, just again, thanks to folks for coming through here in the live chat, both with the questions and your thoughts on Hilton and Sutton. You all showing what you showed with the Hilton Sutton question make me feel a lot better about being so torn on it myself.
Yes, absolutely. That's spot on. So make sure that you are checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We're constantly just giving you the content through the entire off season. It's there. All you got to do is come check it out. All the podcasts are still rolling at you. Make sure, if you've never done it, if you're here right now on YouTube or Facebook, go check us out on the podcast platform for the audio only shows. I mean, I'm sorry, my favorite podcast is Let's Ride with Jeff Hardman.
Yeah, mine too.
I don't miss those. Those are great. If you haven't heard those, you are missing out. They are every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Unfortunately, on Thursdays, you got to put up with me with Stat Geek. And then on Tuesdays, Michael Beck with the live mic. We've also got Matty P doing a cap room. Don't know if it's always going to be cap. He's going to have some other stuff he might have to do with that. All the shows are really, you know the rundown pretty much now. We're keeping everything the same for you through the off season. So because we're keeping it the same, 9:00 next week, we'll be back here once again. Right, Rich?
Yes, because we can't wait.